it's going to get a little bit noisy in a minute because I'll have my compressor on. But what I wanted to do first of all is just show you the airbrush. This is a cheapy one. If you're just doing backgrounds and things of cars, there's no point in buying an expensive one. Also, if you're prone to being clumsy, if you buy an expensive one and drop it, you're going to really hate yourself because it will probably be wrecked. And for fine art purposes, yes, you want the nicest one that you can afford, quality one, but for general purposes such as backgrounds for cars, it's really not that necessary. So this is a cheapy one. It is a double action airbrush. All that means is that when your air is applied, if you squeeze the trigger down, first of all you get the air, and then you pull back to get the paint and the air. If it's a single action, then as soon as you pull the trigger you get paint as well. Now the reason why you'd actually want a double action is because if you're working on your design, you press the trigger and you then start moving as you apply the paint. If you have a single action one, you must apply the paint on the side and then move it, because otherwise you're going to end up with splodges and things. So, you know, that's one of the reasons. You can more accurately use a double action. So basically, it's squeeze and pull the trigger and the air and the paint comes out. Paint goes in the cup. Cup can be side mounted like this one, can be top mounted and can be mounted underneath, or in some cases you get a little jar underneath. I don't recommend the jar if you're just doing small items because you don't need that much paint. The back here screws or unscrews, and this controls how far the lever will travel, the trigger will travel. The more the trigger travels, the more paint you get out of your airbrush, regardless of the pressure applied on the compressor. My compressor runs very well. I've got it set so that it runs very low. It's a relatively small compressor, and I run it between about 30 and 40 psi for doing backgrounds and stuff. What paint do I use? Well, I either use watercolour, liquid watercolours that is, i.e. the ones that look like ink, or I use food colouring. Now I'm sure that if you're doing archival stuff, this is probably not what you want to be using, but if you're just messing around, enjoying yourself, having fun, creating stuff, there's no problem in using food colouring at all. Airbrushes have a reputation for being difficult to clean. If you're just using this sort of stuff, it's really not that difficult. Rinse it out, empty it out of all the paint, rinse it out with water, put a cloth over the trigger and blow back so that this gets the paint out of it. Empty it out until it runs clean and until you can spray clean water through it without any colour coming through. Occasionally you'll have to take it to pieces, strip it down and clean it, but you can find a multitude of videos on the internet of how to do that, and it varies according to the brush that you have. Okay. One thing I will say is that the Iwata brush I have, which is a good one and is an expensive one, is easier to dismantle and put back together because its trigger is in one piece. So if you're looking for one and you think you're going to have to take it to pieces, try and find one where the trigger is in one piece and not in tiny pieces. I have one where you have to spend ages lining it up and putting the trigger in, and it took me about half an hour to get the trigger back in. Life is too short for that kind of aggravation. So other than that, there's not really much to them. You know, they put air through, they force paint through, but they're great fun, they really are. I would recommend, if you're going to use one at all, you get yourself some kind of stand rigged up. This one clips onto my desk, and the reason for that is if for any reason you need to leave your airbrush and you've got paint in it, put it down like that, paint's going to come out. Even if you've got a lid on it, the chances are paint is going to come out. It's not good for your airbrush. So you want to have a stand that you can put your airbrush in and it will hold it upright for you. So you can rig one up yourself or you can buy one. I think they're probably about £8 or £10. The airbrush itself, this one was probably only about a tenner as well. Other ones run into hundreds, but you really don't need it. So the other thing that you do need is either you need one that can run on a air cylinder, you need a compressor other than that, and I have a small compressor under my desk. It's relatively quiet. In fact, when I'm using it, I tend to forget it's even on because I get involved in what I'm doing, and that's it. There we go, it just purrs quietly to itself. And my husband tells me that if I've got the door to the craft room shut, he can't even hear it outside, so it's not very noisy. Now, if you've got one with a cup on it, it's important to note that if, for example, you decide to put the cup up like that and you tip it like that to paint, you're in more danger of getting your paint splashed all over your paper. So I do tend to have mine at an angle which is upright for use. I also tend, although I've got them on at the moment, to use latex gloves when I'm doing this, because otherwise I get my fingers covered in paint one way or another. So just a few little drops in here, off to the side, turn the air on, then pull back for the paint, and I've got mine closed up so it won't do anything. Open it up a little bit, air, paint and move is the way of doing it. There we go. And there we are. And as you can see, just move it gently backwards and forwards, and you get more colour overlaid in the same way as you would normal watercolour, you know, if you're doing a wash. If you go closer, you get more paint. Now you have to be careful that you do not put too much paint on, because you'll do this, which is not usually the effect that you were after. Likewise, if you want to do little dots, don't do that. I mean, this is a fun effect. I've got a piece of card here where I did this on purpose, and it's a great fun effect. I like the background actually, but it may not be what you're actually looking for. What you would need to do is very, very, very slight squeezes on your trigger to do little dots. However, airbrushes are great to use as stencils. Very quick, very easy way of doing stenciling of any kind of design. The other trick that you can do, I need to put some more colour in here, which is very handy if you're trying to do backgrounds of any design. So you can sort of mask. If I tear off a piece of this, for example, and just hold it down and do that, you can get some very, very nice fun masking. You can do clouds with this. This is a good way of doing clouds. So you can do it's very, very pretty, and you can spend hours playing with this. It's really good fun. Cleanup is relatively simple if you're using something liquid like this. Empty out as much paint as you can from your cup, run water through it to clear it out, hold some tissue to it and back blow it to clean it out still more, and eventually you'll find that you can run water through and the water will run clear, and then your brush is clean. You will occasionally need to strip it down to clean it properly, but not too often if you clean it properly when you're actually using it the rest of the time.